The topic is discussing words with other people and how we can discuss the inner voice inside. The inner voice inside is a topic that many people find very difficult to understand and very difficult to convey. The topic is difficult because sometimes people think of it as a supernatural when they talk about voices that are inside. Somehow an outside person is talking to them, delivering messages to them, which is kind of like channeling, but channeling is not really what you're trying to do. It is the inner voice that's inside of you that you're trying to communicate with. And communicate with is a good way to describe it, because communicating with you is a way to then communicate outwardly to other people. It's like somebody's talking to you in your ear, but it's a very, very seamless way that it's talked to. The voice is talking to you in your ear. It doesn't confuse you, and it doesn't confound you. It doesn't make you stop and stutter once you get used to it. You listen to the voice, and you may not repeat the same words because you don't hear words. It's more a flow of words, and what you say is a flow of words in which you convey. And the flow can be a very smooth way of speaking and also a very informative way of speaking, simply because you let down that part of you that gets in the way. And the part that gets in the way is the human part that is not the divine part. We are all part divine, and divine is something that helps us to connect with Christ and helps us to connect with God. And this is the way that we communicate with God. The flesh itself cannot communicate with God isn't necessarily true. It's not true. The flesh can't communicate with God because God can communicate with the flesh no matter what. God can do anything. And so it's the idea that God cannot communicate with the flesh, or is a barrier that somehow he cannot communicate, is simply not true. When he wants to do it, he will do it. When he has rules set up for people to follow, he follows those rules for the sake of the people. And what he does is he created those rules so that we could follow a way, which I don't understand, which is true, exactly why it is that we have to follow these certain rules. And the rules are malleable, the rules are bendable, but we're not the ones that are permitted to bend them. He's the one who goes ahead, bends them, even breaks them, even goes around them completely when he needs to, or when he wants to, or when he decides it's important for us to do so. So when we want to talk to people and we want to talk truthfully, the way we talk truthfully is like this. We don't speak through God, but we don't speak through Christ. We speak through ourselves, and we use a combination of all three. It's the Holy Ghost that does speak, but the Holy Ghost doesn't teach us only. It helps us to communicate, and words are the most powerful thing that human beings have, to convey ideas and to convey thoughts and convey emotions and convey the things that are important to us and the things we try to say to each other, so that we know what we're saying to each other and we don't miscommunicate and create conflict and create difficulties and create differences that aren't necessarily important for us to ignore, but also important for us to try and limit. Communication between people is something that's extremely important. The truth is a thing that minimizes the amount of conflict and disinformation that causes conflict between people. When people don't know things and people can go ahead and fill in the blanks, the fill in the blank is dependent on the person's personality. If a person is negative or a gloom and doom personality, if he's left wanting information from someone that he cares about, and people that we care about are the ones that we can make the most egregious assumptions that are wrong, simply because we want to care about what it is that's going on in their lives, and they may not be forthcoming with us about what it is that's important in their lives. And so we can catastrophize what it is and misinterpret any information that we add into whatever information we feel that they left out. So when we communicate with people, the best thing to do is to communicate with honesty and truth. If we communicate with honesty and truth, it can put us at a disadvantage if one of the people is not honest. This is true. But when we speak with people, we have to trust, too, that people are good and people are not trying to always get us. In environments where the people may be questionable in character, questionable in what they want from us, and questionable in what degree of wrong they wish to do or are capable of doing, we can be marks in people's plans to go ahead and rob us or steal from us or use us for a purpose that is not honest. This is true. But the majority of the time that we as human beings interact with other people, this is not the case. We are not trying to get each other all the time. When you're in an environment where that may be true, when you're in an environment where that could be what's the truth, the people that convey the greatest need for honesty and truth and use words like honor, respect, are the ones who have the leverage against those who are beholden to follow what rules they set out in order to have them be at not the beck and call, but have them be at the receiving end of whatever final outcome. Someone who is not honest, but uses those honest words to try and use as leverage and try and use as a way to control someone who may not agree with that, but is forced to follow whatever terms that these people lay out. And this is in the criminal environment. You can find this a lot, but the environment that criminals inhabit when they use those kinds of things, is also something that can be layered with the truth as well. It doesn't mean because they use those words, honest, truth, honest, loyalty, respect. It doesn't mean they don't know what it means. It means they know a version of it that doesn't work in the real world, but they may be able to use what they know in a way that is very effective in the real world too. And the real world is not the criminal world. The criminal world is a small fraction of what is the real world. So you can't really say that it is the majority real world. But when somebody lives in it 100%, then that is their world. So if you want to be someone who is honest and not be someone who uses words to confuse or convey things that cause misinterpretation, misinformation, or cause conflict, then use truth, use honesty. You can measure your words, but when you measure your words, you tend to not be honest truthfully with yourself, what you're trying to convey. It doesn't mean to wear your heart on your sleeve, but it does mean to be truthful to a point that's comfortable to you. And that comfort level is something that you can find. When we use God, and using God is not a great way to say it. Using God is not a way. When we work with God, when God is with us and in our lives, and faith is something that we don't rely on, but faith is something that is a part of us. We don't want to rely on faith because faith is not something that is relied on, because relying on faith is something that conveys the idea that faith is never wrong. Faith is wrong only when our faith is not right. When we have a degree of faith that is skewed or not correct because we don't do things that are right, then the faith that we have in the God that we trust is not a God that we can't have faith in to trust, but it is a faith that we cannot trust because we're the ones who lack the belief in ourselves and lack the belief in God to truly be able to rely on faith being what we truly can use as our guide to come to answers that help us to live better lives and help other people and be good and honest people and good people and contribute to the world and society and humanity as a whole. It's not a confusing idea, but this is just a brief outline of what it might be.